Once in a valley nestled between towering peaks, there lay a village on the brink of vanishing. The rivers that once ran crystal clear now trickled sluggishly, their waters tinted with decay. The fields that had once bloomed in riotous colour now lay barren, their soil cracked and thirsty. The people once full of life and laughter had become weary shadows of themselves, each day more left in search of hope elsewhere until only a handful remained. Among them was a young woman named Elira, whose heart ached for the land that had raised her. She had grown up listening to the old stories, the ones that spoke of the mountain gods, the giant deities who shaped the land and watched over the village from their home at the mountain's peak. It was said that their dreams brought the changing of seasons, their breaths carried the winds, and their whispers guided the river's paths. But for years the land had withered, and no prayers had been answered. If the gods still existed, they no longer watched over the valley. Determined to save what remained, Elira set out on a perilous journey. Armed with only her resolve, she climbed the mountain, each step taking her further from the familiar warmth of her village and into the unyielding embrace of the wilderness. The ascent was treacherous. Icy winds clawed at her, the path crumbled beneath her feet, and the air grew thin, yet she pressed on. Days passed. As she climbed higher, the world below faded into a hazy memory. The sky seemed closer, the silence heavier. She navigated through forests of twisted, ancient trees, whose roots wove together like the veins of the earth. Shadows stretched long across the path, and unseen creatures moved just beyond her sight, their whispers echoing between the trees. Still she did not waver. She scaled sheer cliffs where the wind howled like a living thing clawing at her cloak, threatening to pull her into the abyss below. The nights were cruel, cold and starless, the darkness pressing in as if the mountain itself were testing her resolve. At last she reached the summit, where she expected to find the celestial halls of the gods. Instead, she found a sight that filled her with both awe and dread. Before her lay the colossal forms of the gods, giants of stone and sky, sprawled across the peak as if caught in an endless slumber. Their bodies, covered in moss and lichen, had become one with the mountain. Their hair, woven with vines and roots, stretched into the valleys below. Their breaths, so slow and faint, barely stirred the air. It was clear now why the land had been failing. The gods had not abandoned their people, they had simply ceased to wake. Elira approached the closest of them, her footsteps small against the vastness of their being. She felt the warmth of their presence like the last embers of a dying fire. If they slept forever, the land would perish. She needed to wake them. She set to work. She gathered the sharpest stones and cut away the creeping vines that bound them. She cleared the debris that had settled in the hollows of their bodies. She built fires at their feet, sending warmth into their frozen forms. She sang the songs of the village, old melodies carried by the wind. She called to them with the voice of the earth, with the voice of the rivers, with the voice of the people who still remained, hoping her efforts would reach whatever dreamscape held them captive. For days nothing changed. Despair gnawed at her, but she would not leave. She pressed her hands against the cold skin of the gods and poured every ounce of life within her into waking them. Then one evening, as the last rays of the sun cast golden light over the peak, a great tremor shook the mountain. A sigh, deep as the ocean's depths, rolled through the heavens. The earth trembled beneath her feet. A massive hand, heavy as the sky itself, shifted. A rumble like distant thunder stirred the air. One by one, the gods began to wake. Their eyelids, thick with centuries of dust, fluttered open, revealing eyes vast as the night sky. They gazed upon the world they had long neglected, upon the land that had grown weak in their absence. A breath, slow and powerful, exhaled from their lips, sweeping across the valley below. The wind stirred, the rivers surged, the earth pulsed with renewed energy. The gods rose, shaking the mountain free of its slumber, the sky filled with colour, the air alive with their return. They turned their gaze to Elira, small yet resolute before them. Though she could not hear their voices, she felt their gratitude resonate through the very bones of the earth. With the gods awakened, the land flourished, the rivers swelled with life-giving waters, the fields turned green once more, and the village, once on the brink of vanishing, began to thrive again. Those who had left returned, drawn by the whisper of renewal carried on the wind. Life, once fading, now surged with boundless energy. Elira returned to the village, but she was forever changed. She had walked among gods, had seen the threads that wove life and death together. She did not seek recognition, nor did she claim to be a hero. She simply carried on, tending to the land she loved, knowing that when the earth grew silent again, she would climb the mountain once more and remind the gods that they must never sleep too long. In the years that followed, legends grew around her deeds. Stories of the girl who had awoken the gods spread far beyond the valley. Travelers came seeking her wisdom, hoping to glimpse the one who had breathed life back into the world. Yet Elira remained as she had always been, humble, quiet, and devoted to the land. And when the time came, when the first signs of the gods' deepening slumber began to whisper through the earth once more, she knew she would make the journey again, for as long as it took, for as many times as the world needed.